War often turns innovation into a desperate race, a contest not just of armies but of ideas. In the early 1940s, as Europe was engulfed by the flames of the Second World War, American tank designers faced a frustrating dilemma. The U.S. Army's Ordnance Department wanted reliability and numbers. The engineers, however, wanted power and progress. Deep inside factories in Detroit and testing grounds in Aberdeen, a strange prototype sat idle, a tank design that was too heavy for the general's liking, too experimental for the bureaucracy, and ultimately rejected before it could see battle. It was known to few, documented by even fewer, and nearly forgotten by history. Yet years later, this very concept, dismissed as impractical, would become the blueprint for the machines that finally matched and even surpassed Germany's legendary Tiger and Panther tanks. The American tank doctrine of the time was built on mobility over firepower. The Sherman, reliable, fast, and easy to produce, was designed to exploit breakthroughs, not to duel with heavily armored beasts. But as the war dragged on and reports from Europe grew grim, it became clear that America's strategy underestimated Germany's engineering might. The Tiger I could shrug off a Sherman's 75mm rounds like pebbles against steel. The Panther, sleek and deadly, could destroy a Sherman at over 2 kilometers while being nearly immune to return fire. Panic crept into Allied command centers. The Sherman was outmatched. Soldiers began calling their tanks Ronsons after the cigarette lighter. Lights every time. Yet, somewhere in the archives, blueprints for a forgotten tank hinted at what might have been a design with thicker armor, a sloped hull, and a long, high-velocity gun. A design that had once been deemed too radical. When the engineers revisited this old project, they realized they had already held the key to countering German armor, only they had shelved it due to outdated doctrines and inter-department rivalries. The design was modified, modernized, and renamed, evolving into what would become the M26 Pershing, America's long-awaited answer to the Tiger. But the irony was brutal. The very design America had once rejected would now be the one to face Germany's best on the battlefield and win. By 1944, the Allies had landed in Normandy, but they were paying a heavy price in armor. Every encounter with German tanks, especially in the hedgerows of France, was a brutal reminder that the Sherman's days as king of the battlefield were over. The Tiger's 80mm cannon could destroy a Sherman before the American crews even spotted it. Entire armored platoons were wiped out in ambushes. Veterans told stories of shells bouncing off enemy tanks as if the laws of physics themselves had turned against them. Meanwhile, Germany's tank crews, highly trained and often veterans of the Eastern Front, took immense pride in their mechanical monsters. To them, Allied tanks were little more than targets. American command had to make a choice: keep producing thousands of light and medium tanks that could swarm the enemy, or risk everything on a heavier design that might arrive too late. The bureaucratic inertia of Washington and the logistical concerns of General Patton's rapid warfare philosophy made this decision torturous. Heavy tanks required stronger bridges, more fuel, and slower convoys, all things the U.S. Army wanted to avoid. But soldiers in the field had no patience for theory. They were facing death daily, often fighting against odds that defied bravery. Letters from tank crews began to echo through the War Department, begging for a machine that could actually stand toe-to-toe with the Panthers and Tigers. Then came the turning point. Engineers, tired of rejections and red tape, decided to reintroduce the shelved heavy tank design with modern improvements. They strengthened the transmission, fitted a new 90mm gun, and optimized armor angles for maximum deflection. The result was something powerful, menacing, and distinctly American. But because it had been rejected once, it had to fight its way not only onto the battlefield, but through the walls of bureaucracy. The tank that would later save countless lives, the T-26E3 prototype, was almost denied again for being too heavy for modern warfare. What followed was one of the most dramatic turnarounds in American military engineering. A design once abandoned for being too ambitious was suddenly America's only hope against Germany's finest. When the first M26 Pershings rolled into Europe in early 1945, they were met with skepticism and awe. Soldiers stared at the machine as if seeing an American tank for the first time. Its low, sleek profile and long cannon looked nothing like the stubby Shermans they were used to. It was a predator among prey. The true test came in Cologne, Germany, in one of the most famous tank duels ever captured on film. A Tiger Wine, guarding a bridge, had already destroyed several Shermans before the Pershing arrived. As the gunner lined up the shot through the Pershing's advanced optics, he fired, one round through the Tiger's turret. The German behemoth burst into flames. For the first time, American armor had not just survived, but triumphed. The footage of that duel, real, raw, and unforgettable, marked the moment America's rejected design beat Germany's best. But that single victory symbolized more than a tank battle. It was the redemption of American engineering philosophy. The Pershing wasn't perfect. Its engine was underpowered, and its mechanical reliability still lagged behind the Sherman's legendary dependability. Yet it had something the crews had long prayed for, a fighting chance. Reports from the front lines flooded in. Pershings were taking on Panthers and winning. Even Tiger II, the King Tiger, found itself vulnerable to its 90mm rounds when struck in the right spots. Though the Pershing arrived late, it sent a clear message. If the U.S. had listened to its engineers earlier, the story of tank warfare in Europe might have been very different. The men who fought in those steel beasts knew they were part of something special. For once, they could stand and fight, not just maneuver and hope. The M26 became a symbol of what could be achieved when innovation triumphed over bureaucracy. The tank's influence would echo through decades, becoming the ancestor of the Patton series that dominated the Cold War. But in those final months of World War II, it was not about legacy or politics. It was about survival, redemption, and proving that even a design once cast aside could change the course of history. After the war, historians and engineers looked back at the story of the M26 Pershing with a mix of pride and regret. Pride, because the machine had proven America could match Germany's most advanced armor when given the chance. Regret, because it had come too late to save thousands of tank crews who fought with outdated machines against impossible odds. The rejected design had finally earned its place, but at a cost written in steel and blood. It revealed a deep flaw in wartime decision-making. Innovation often loses to logistics, and boldness often bows to bureaucracy. Yet, it also showcased America's greatest strength, the ability to learn fast, adapt, and rise from its own mistakes. In the years that followed, the lessons of the Pershing became doctrine. The U.S. Army redefined its approach to tank development, giving birth to the M46, M47, and eventually the M48 Patton, direct descendants of the rejected idea. These tanks would dominate NATO arsenals for decades, facing Soviet armor across the Cold War's tense front lines. What began as an unwanted experiment became the foundation of American armored supremacy. The same principles of sloped armor, long-barreled guns, and balance between speed and firepower shaped the design philosophy of modern tanks like the M60 and even the M1 Abrams. When historians revisit World War II's armored battles, they often speak of German innovation and Soviet mass production. But the story of the M26 Pershing, born from rejection, revived by necessity and proven by courage, stands as a quiet testament to persistence. It reminds us that great designs sometimes sleep in the shadows of bureaucracy, waiting for the right moment to prove the doubters wrong. In the cold streets of Cologne, beneath the smoke and rubble, the world witnessed the birth of a new era in tank warfare, not from a grand unveiling or a technological revolution, but from a rejected design that refused to die.